Hello, this is Mr. Kong. Welcome to my chemistry revision series. Today we'll learn about atomic structure. Now, this is an overview of today's summary lesson. We are going to look at subatomic particles and we'll look at how we can represent these atoms. And one other important concept will be to look at isotopes, and finally, we will look at the electronic configuration of atoms. Now, for a start, this is an example of an atom which is surrounded by electrons, and within the nucleus, there are protons and neutrons. The three particles that are so-called the subatomic particles will be the electron, proton, and the neutron, and they all have different properties. This table shows you the three kinds of particles, and it also shows you the various locations, whether it is inside the nucleus or outside the nucleus, surrounding the nucleus, and the relative mass as well as the relative charge are also given, and you can see that they are three very different particles with very different properties. We represent atoms using the periodic table in a kind of a notation called the nuclide notation. This notation has the mass number at the top, as well as the atomic number or the proton number at the bottom. Now, this is the reverse of the periodic table, and therefore, do take note when you're asked to write down the nuclide notation or to write down an atom. You have to write it in this particular manner. Examples include lithium, chlorine, and fluorine as shown here in the slide. Isotopes is an important part of this whole chapter, and the first thing that we learn about will be the definition of isotopes. And in general, you have to state these three main points. That you have to first state, very importantly, that they are atoms of the same element, and of course, the rest of it you know very, very well. They have the same number of protons and electrons, but a different number of neutrons. Now, if let's say you're given a table with information of an atom or isotopes, and you're asked to use the data to help support your answer, you have to mention the exact number of neutrons for each of the various isotopes. Now, this is a visual representation of two isotopes here of carbon, and you can see that the main difference is that carbon 14 has 8 neutrons, which is 2 more than carbon 12. All other number of protons or electrons are exactly the same. And this gives us the next portion here, which is the properties of isotopes. And in general, they have a very slight difference in physical properties, such as the melting point, boiling point, or the density. However, even though that is slightly different, what is same about them is that they have the same chemical properties because the number of valence electrons is the same, and therefore they will behave in a very similar way. Now we have two naturally occurring isotopes, which are chlorine 35 as well as chlorine 37. And because of the fact that they exist in different abundances, one is 75%, the other one is 25%. Therefore, the average relative atomic mass is 35.5. Now you have done calculations involving this before. I hope you look through and to revise what you need to know. Now we come to this final portion about electronic configuration. And this general rule is for the first 20 elements, whereby the first shell can accommodate a maximum of 2 electrons, and the second and third shells accommodate a maximum of 8 electrons. Now, the most important thing is to be able to determine the electronic configurations of the various atoms. And you can pause this video right now and write down and think about what the electronic structure or configuration of the 4 elements are. Now, I hope that you managed to get the answers correct. And as a final notice here, I just want to highlight that the last number which shows you the valence shell, tells you not just the number of valence electrons, but also the group number. And in this case, potassium is in group 1, chlorine in group 7, argon in group 0, and calcium in group 2. And this brings us to the end of today's summary lesson. Here is a recap of the 4 main things that we've talked about. Thank you.